Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Thank you, thank you for tuning in live or listening in a replay. Today we're going to be going over a very awesome topic: the three trust curves. And these are the type of conversations that we have with our trustees and in our training and things of that nature. And so, you do need to be in trust to implement this strategy. This is a part of a proprietary strategy, but nevertheless, it's still important to know that these are the type of training that you will be receiving, and in a more in-depth and proprietary fashion in our training. And so we always want to prepare you all mindset-wise for what is it that we're talking about, what are we looking to execute when it comes to trustee training and things of that nature. So very excited about today's topic. Today's topic, once again, is the three trust curves. If you would like to get in contact with the vault, feel free to contact us at christian@trustchristian.com. Once again, that's christian@trustchristian.com. So today's topic for trustees and the like is the three trust curves. And so as a trustee, your number one job as a trustee is to grow the assets of the trust that you are managing as a trustee. And it's interesting because a lot of times a lot of people are not aware of what their number one job is inside of a trust. But this is your number one job, is to grow the assets of the trust. So let's just talk about the three phases first, or the three curves, I should say. More than their curves and their phases all in one. The first one is the leverage curve, or the leverage phase. You know, that's one of the most challenging phases I see so many people go through, because they don't know, they've never been taught leverage. They don't know how to use other people's money. They don't know what real money is. They don't know leveraging. Leveraging is dealing with compound interest and interest in general. So very excited about talking about the leverage phase. The second phase is going to be the next phase is going to be the accumulation phase, or the accumulation curve. That's where assets are truly being acquired from the leverage phase. And these phases are sequential, so they come right after each other. And the third phase is dealing with supply and demand. And I love the way this was taught to us in our private community with our senior mentors and senior trustees. And thank you all for always giving me the information I need to protect my family's wealth and grow my family's wealth. Senior mentors, all of you all know who you are. Trust Christians, really appreciate you all. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And so I just want to talk about these phases today, and looking forward to sharing it and partnering with individuals that have not been privy to our private community or our private mentorship program yet, but can still learn in the process. So excited about that. Thanks, B. Alexandra, for tuning in live. So the first phase is the leverage phase, ladies and gentlemen. What is the leverage phase? The leverage phase is the phase where you learn how to utilize other people's money. It's where you learn how to be able to build business credit, be able to take business credit and acquire assets. You know, it falls right in line with accumulation phase, but the first phase is learning how to do so efficiently, because public school has put us at a disadvantage and has not taught us how to use other people's money, but it tells us to go into debt and use other people's money via the government to get a school loan and go to school. So the leverage phase is all about learning how to use other people's money. It's learning how to utilize the capital that you do have to be able to take out loans and grow that wealth via the bank statement, via the proof of funds, things of that nature. And so leveraging is very important. Being able to utilize our private banking system. Private banking deals with leverage. Why does it deal with leverage? Because in a banking system, it's all about leverage. You give the bank $1, they lend out 9. That's called hypothecation. That is a form of leverage. That is what we learn and we utilize in our private trust community and private trustees the alike. This is a very critical phase because this is where you learn how to separate fake money from real money. See, everyone is taught to utilize paper as real money. Well, when you learn that paper money is nothing more than a contract, and that's a piece of paper, then you understand that leverage is to utilize fake money, paper, contracts to acquire hard assets to actually create more leverage, loans, to actually go out and grow the wealth. The accumulation phase. The accumulation phase is a phase of the asking price and getting it at the wrong price. See, leverage is being able to use other people's money, but the accumulation phase is a very interesting phase because at the accumulation phase, we learned that this is where you get assets that are at bottom dollar prices, such as gold and silver right now being at bottom dollar prices. This is where you get hard assets, not just gold and silver, real estate at bottom dollar prices. This is where the market is being manipulated and suppressed by wealthy individuals for them to get assets at dirt cheap prices. That is how you go into what's called a land grab, where you're able to acquire assets at a much deep discounted price because you've utilized leverage and now you are acquiring assets to grow that wealth even more, particularly hard assets, not paper assets, not leveraging assets, assets that you've accumulated that are quote unquote growing more in appreciation. Growing more in appreciation. And then we have the third curve or the third phase, which is supply and demand. This is an interesting concept, and I'm going to talk more about it as we go through. But what's so interesting is the supply and demand phase. This is where, after the market has changed, the prices were depressed. They were at bottom dollar prices. And now, because you've accumulated those assets at bottom dollar prices, you're in a position of supply and demand. That's where you can sell assets now. You can sell assets at a higher price, or you can grow assets at a higher price because there's less of it in the market. Because you've acquired so much of it, supply, that the demand is so great for it because there's not enough of it in the marketplace that's open at the accumulation phase anymore. These are critical phases in growing the wealth of a trust and your family. These are 3 critical curves. They are to be followed in sequential order as a trustee. This is how we learn to build our wealth. This is a system. Just like they have a public school education, they have a private trust education to grow your family's wealth privately by leveraging other people's money, by acquiring assets at deep discounted prices, and then having the ability to sell them in a supply and demand phase, utilizing them as collateral. In the supply and demand phase, we also learn not just to sell, we also learn how to lend and acquire interest off of those assets. We don't always have to sell them because there's such a limited amount of it in the marketplace now. Housing gets, you know how real estate is. After a certain market is flooded where there's a lot of people in there, now it's a seller's market. Well, guess what? They can sell it at any price they want to sell it at. They can loan it out at any price that they want to loan it out at. Why? Because there's not enough of it. Supply and demand. Collateral. You can utilize these assets in the supply and demand phase to acquire more assets because you can utilize the original asset as a piece of collateral because it's what? An asset. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we learn in our private community. We learn how leverage, accumulation, supply and demand all work together and they go in an order. And this relates to hard assets, not just soft assets. That's how it works. How does it work? You have to get into a trust. You have to get into a vehicle that can allow you to create leverage. You cannot create leverage from a social security number. And if you do, it's limited. Why? Because we already know personal credit is never going to be as good as business credit. And we learn in our private community that everything's business, nothing's personal. That's what a public school teaches you. Everything's personal. Do things in your name. Acquire the house in your name. Acquire the cars in your name. Acquire the assets in your name. Acquire the jewelry in your name. Everything's in your name. Why weren't you taught to put those assets inside of a vehicle that is protected via contract law, Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution? That's a public school education. That's why. Well, we have a private education. That's how it works. You have to enroll or become a part of a private community or have a private mentor to help you understand private information, to understand how to utilize business vehicles, not public ones, but private ones. Put them in a position of leverage, accumulation, and to be able to loan out via collateral, supply and demand, or sell via supply and demand. So, how else does it work? For example, you have the leverage phase. Right now, silver, I think on the market, if I go to Kitco, I like Kitco. Kitco is a major website, KITTCO.com. It is a exchange website to at least let you know what the daily price of silver is. So I'm going to give you all an idea of what the leverage phase looks like and how it runs through our three phases. And this is for every asset. It could be for a house, it could be for gold, it could be for any type of asset. Like I say, particularly this system works better with hard assets, not just soft assets or paper contracts and things of that nature. So I'm going to go ahead and look for the silver. I'm going to look for the silver today. Just do the silver. It's pretty basic. The leverage phase for silver right now. So silver right now in the market, the asking price is $15 on the market. This is the leverage phase. This is where you get out of paper money. It is depreciating. This is what we learn in our private community and what we learn from our private mentors. How can you save money that is depreciating as you hold it? That's called dollar bills. That's called paper. So we leverage into harder assets, and you will see why that's important as we move forward. Leverage. That means you're taking one asset and, one thing, like I say, paper. Paper, people consider dollar bills an asset, so I'm not going to say that it's not, but it's not the strongest form of an asset. There are many forms of strong assets, particularly dollar bills. Dollar bills, we're going to convert them into silver. And like I say, there could be many other things. Silver is coined money by the United States government, U.S. Mint. That's U.S. Mint. I'll repeat that again. The United States U.S. Mint. The dollar bills that you're holding, they don't come from the U.S. Mint. Where do they come from? They come from the Federal Reserve. That is not a government institution. It is a private banking cartel. Let's be very clear. Leverage. This is elite education. We understand that real money is collectible art, cars, jewelry, things that appreciate, gold, silver, real estate. Leverage, being able to take the paper dollar bills and acquire silver. Well, guess what? On the silver that's minted by the U.S., not only is it going to cost you $15, it actually says it's worth $1. How is that beneficial if it says it's only worth $1? Because it's going to help you retain the value in a hard asset. See, what's helping you retain value in your dollar bills? There's nothing backing it. What used to back it is not backing it anymore. Gold, it's not backing it anymore. You have to make it a point to leverage your family and the assets by hard assets, by assets in general, particularly silver, gold, and real estate, art, jewelry, leverage, creating a storehouse for the dollar bill. So it's $15. It's worth $1. It says it's $1 on the silver, but it's not. Even on the gold, I think it says it's 50, but it's not. It's actually worth what? Let me see what gold is right now. Gold is 12, 14, but it says it's $50 by the U.S. Mint. Who's telling the truth, ladies and gentlemen? This is how the elite are operating in front of your eyes. They're acquiring assets through leverage. They're growing companies and they're acquiring assets. This is how we move into the accumulation phase, buying assets at a depreciated price or at a depressed price, at a price that is a deep discounted price. That lets you know that gold and silver are undervalued. Why? Because you leveraged out and it says it's worth $1 and $50. And when you go cash them out, you get more than that. The accumulation phase, you're acquiring all of these assets via leverage at deep discounted prices, such as we are right now. We are in the accumulation phase, ladies and gentlemen. As a whole, as an economy, you should be continuously leveraging everything that you're doing, efforts, business-wise, for accumulation phase. We are in the accumulation phase, particularly for hard assets such as silver. Why? Silver is going to be acquired at a deep discounted price. But we're also going to be able to acquire these assets and hold a position of supply and demand. People say, well, okay, we went through the accumulation phase. We acquired the assets. What does supply and demand look like for these hard assets? Supply and demand for these hard assets looks like this. Silver is an industrial metal. Not only is silver an industrial metal, it's used in medical equipment. It's utilized in your cell phone. This is an asset that most people don't want to believe, but there's a limited supply of silver on the planet. You can do your research. This is what a trustee knows in our training program. This is what a trustee knows that is acquiring these assets. Silver and gold, all precious metals. The reason why they're called precious metals is because of what? There's a limited supply. So we understand supply and demand. Supply and demand gets you to the point where, guess what? Oh yeah, no, I'm not done with what they're utilizing silver and gold for. Not only for your cell phones, not only for medical equipment, they're using gold and silver to go to space. So for all you all that want to go to space, for all you all that want to participate in that whole exploration, satellites, you want to have greater Wi-Fi capacity, you want to have more precision with your satellites. Satellites are usually gold, not just yellow. I know they look yellow when they send them off into space. That's a gold film around it. They're sending it off to space. That is the supply and demand phase. It will run out. Just like space on the planet for real estate. Certain pieces of property cost more because of supply and demand. So supply and demand puts you in a position where you can utilize that gold and silver and leverage it, we could say leverage it and use it as collateral. I really wanted to use collateral and collateralize it and go out and acquire more wealth. Oh yeah, we'll let the medical equipment company hold it. We'll let you take out loans and acquire more silver. That's what they do, ladies and gentlemen. They acquire these assets, they hold these assets, and they utilize these assets as collateral long term. We do not sell gold and silver. We don't sell certain hard assets. Why? Because there's a limited amount on the planet. They call them precious metals because they're precious. It's not that much of them. It's like a diamond or a pearl. They're not just growing. You know how long it takes for gold and silver? It doesn't even grow. They came from asteroids. Most people don't know that because they haven't done their scientific research. It's on a periodic table. But guess what? Everything on the periodic table is not always going to be on the periodic table. I know that sounds a little wild. Oh, I've never heard that before. Isn't it? Don't they just... Do you know how gold and silver are made? Most people don't. They come from asteroids hitting Earth. One of the guys, he emailed us to the vault and he said, I thought it was a stream of gold. I said, nah, buddy, this isn't oil. And you see how the world is clamoring over the oil reserves. They're pulling out the blood of the earth. That's the blood, ladies and gentlemen. Oil is the thing that's holding those tectonic plates from shifting right up under us and having earthquakes. Do you see how it's leveraged? Do you see how oil is being accumulated? You guys, you should do your research on how much oil United States is holding in Alaska, how much oil they have in Hawaii. But they'll tell you, oh, we're in a depression of oil. It's scarce. We have to get it from Saudi. We have to get it from Iran. We have to get it from Iraq. That's because they're in an accumulation phase. They've leveraged. They've created an oil cartel called OPEC. That's leverage. Their accumulation phase. They are acquiring it at deep discounted prices because they've created leverage. And now there's a supply and demand. So people that are older, people that come from an older generation, I'm in the millennial generation. There are people that are over 35, 36 years old. They know about the oil crisis, quote unquote. The oil crisis where oil was limited at that point. But somehow in 2018, we're back at oil. You could just get oil whenever you feel like it. That's because they were creating leverage at that time. And now they have an accumulation phase going on. And there will be a point where the supply and demand for oil becomes so great, the prices will become so great. If you hold it, you will become even more wealthy. I want to share with you all these 3 trust curves. They are critical in growing your wealth for your family's estate, for generations, ladies and gentlemen. So, thank you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. Feel free to type any questions into the chat. Definitely appreciate it if you all have any questions. But I definitely wanted to talk about these 3 trust curves today, because it's rather important for you to know how to grow your wealth. How to grow your wealth in a position of true generational wealth and passing it on. And a lot of people don't know how to do that. They don't have a plan. They're given this whole savings program. Nothing I said right here was about savings. And I mentioned to you, when you are a trustee, your #1 job is to grow the assets of the trust. I'll give you all a parable and then I will be gone. There was a parable in the Bible about the talents that there was a master. God had a story in the Bible. It says there's a story about how the master gave 3 of his servants these assets. He gave the first one 5, he gave the second one 3, and he gave the first one, he gave the third one 1. The first one that had 5 went out and grew the assets. That's a trustee. He grew the assets and he came back to the master with 10. The second one, he went out, he or she, please don't take these gender specific. This is just a parable, ladies and gentlemen. The second one went out and grew the assets. That's a trustee. The third one took the asset and hid it in the dirt. And when the master came and approached him, he said, "What did you do with it?" He said, "Master, I've saved it from thievery." Thievery. I've saved it because I was afraid. I didn't want you to lose your wealth. This is the story. You all can Google the parable of the talents. You guys can Google that. He said, I saved it from thievery so you wouldn't lose your wealth. He said, I was afraid. There was actually a word in there. He said he was afraid. How can you grow wealth if you're afraid? This is all about investing. There's risk involved. The definition of an entrepreneur is to take risk. The definition of a trustee is to take risk. Nothing about wealth growth is savings or fear. Nothing. It's all about risk. But with great risk comes great reward. I encourage you all to look into the 3 trust curves. Where are you? Are you leveraging out of your paper dollar bills and getting into tangible, hard assets to create more leverage for yourself using other people's money other than your own money? Because that's what everybody thinks. So I got to use my own money for everything. And that's why it's taken them so long to grow wealth. Secondly, are you accumulating assets with the money that you're generating from the leverage? Even greater assets. Third, are you ready for that supply and demand phase where we get out into 2030? In 2030, they're saying, oh, well, guess what? We don't have enough of this on the planet. So can someone sell it to us? Can you sell this to the government? Can you sell that to the government? Did you all know that most of the government buildings in Washington, D.C., the United States government doesn't own? They're renting them from private enterprise? That's called supply and demand. Private people own those properties in D.C. The government is renting them. How can the government own private property? Do you know what the government stands for? It stands for public property. The government doesn't own anything. Because if that was the case, that means everybody, the general population, the public would own it. Well, that is the case. The public is renting it for space to do whatever they need to do for public protection. Interesting. We got a question here. Creditor guy. He says, how do you set up a trust with the bank? So in our private community, I can tell you right now, we don't set up trust with bank. First of all, that's an institutional trust. Institutional trust. I mean, you can go to a bank, they definitely will set up a trust for you, and they're gonna be institutional trustees of the trust. Most of the time, I've seen people come to me with that type of stuff before. The second part of your question is, if the Social Security number is rescinded, does that give you the power to be tax exempt? First of all, we practice tax avoidance. So tax avoidance is different from tax evasion. The Social Security number is just a number, that you can utilize for many different reasons. If you understand the history of that number, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're utilizing that number to do business with. Because a trust is a person. It gets an EIN number just like the Social Security number, and it's utilized to grow credit and move forward in that exact fashion. You as a human being are never in commerce. This is what we learn in private trusteeship. You're never in commerce. There's always a business entity. There's business entities in commerce. Every business entity has a number. You don't have a number. You weren't born with a number. You get that number to do business. But there's a public side and there's a private side. There's a public education and a private education. That's necessary. The private education teaches you how to utilize EINs, employer identification numbers, not Social Security numbers, to do business. Okay. Next question. What all do you need to open up an irrevocable non-interest bearing account? So those are the type of questions that you ask inside of a consultation. I encourage you all to get a consultation if you have these style of questions. Christian@trustchristian.com. That's you're asking me to give you a proprietary process to go out and open up an irrevocable trust bearing account. And I'm going to share with you all, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to tell you, if you guys want to subvert what we're talking about right here in this particular forum, ladies and gentlemen, go look up the definition of a trust in a law dictionary. It says it is a secret. So you asking on a public forum an irrevocable trust and open it up, a trust account on an interest-bearing account, you're supposed to know that. And if you don't know that, it's best for you to acquire that information in a private forum. So next question. Suppose you have $1,000 in assets. However, I would like to accumulate more as a trustee. How much is the trustee training? Trustee training is not the same for everyone. I encourage you all to email us at christian@trustchristian.com, and so we can go over that in the trustee training, because, ladies and gentlemen, I deal with clients that are high net worth clients, individuals that make over $10 million a year. Those are considered high net worth clients. We deal with individuals that are accredited investors that make over $250,000 a year in their own profession or in their business, and they've done that 3 years in a row, so they've been classified as a accredited investor. That will definitely not be the same for someone that is making less than $100,000 a year. So I encourage you all to email us at christian@trustchristian.com and get a consultation and be prepared for that. And I just want to thank you all for tuning in live or listening in a replay. Today's episode was about 3 trust curves and the phases that you're going to go through to ultimately build generational wealth. You all may be familiar with the Rothschilds banking cartel or banking institution, and that comes from a position of understanding that these individuals have leveraged themselves from the first Rothschilds. They've acquired assets through the accumulation over a period of time. And guess what? Now the world needs loans. This is a banking institution that is giving out loans publicly and privately to fund many, many things. So thank you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. Feel free to share this with your friends and family. Christian at trustchristian.com to enroll either in a training program or to get a consultation to learn how to protect and grow your wealth in a very strategic and powerful position.